Hello boys and girls, and welcome to my FCE CAE Speaking Part 3. So this is the third part in the speaking exam. I'm doing the FCE and CAE together because here in Part 3 they're basically identical. Now let's go through it quickly because there's a lot to say. What happens? Well, this part lasts for about 4 minutes. So what's going to happen is that you are going to work together with your partner because you're always in the exam with somebody else. It could happen that you're in a group of 3. Usually they're the last people at the end of the day, if there's an odd number. So what's going to happen is that you're going to be sitting with your partner. The examiner's going to explain the task to you. And the examiner's just going to kind of step back or sit back a bit and look at the desk, which is basically a way to say that you two talk together. Don't look at me, look at each other. Quite often in the YouTube videos, if you ever watch YouTube videos on FCE or CAE Speaking, you'll often see the candidates are talking to the examiner. That's not right. You're talking to each other because it's a discussion between you two. So basically what you get is something like this, okay? So here in the center, I'll come and read it. It says, why should some people find these things difficult to live without? Hairdryer, credit card, car, mobile phone, television. So what's going to happen? For 2 minutes, you and your partner are going to discuss those 5 points, or you're going to try to. Right? Very rarely do people finish all of those in 2 minutes. And then what's going to happen? The examiner is going to stop you. And then the examiner is going to ask another question, like a concluding question. Which one do you think is the most important? So for the first 2 minutes, you basically just explain discuss your opinions regarding those 5 points, okay? And then the examiner might say which one or which two or which is the best and the worst. Listen very carefully to the examiner's question. And then you can go over what you've just said, explain in a different way and say what you think is the most important. So basically it's for 3 minutes. Before, in the old CAE format or FCE format, it was 3 minutes without a break, and the problem was that many candidates didn't know when to start the second part of the question with the conclusion and often didn't complete the task. So well done Cambridge for changing it. It makes it a bit easier. Now, what do we need to do to pass this? What are some of the problems? There are some big problems here and I will tell you what they are. Right, of course, because you're discussing with your partner, you're going to agree and disagree. Now, I know this sounds like I'm advertising myself, and I am. Please go and watch my video on how to agree and disagree naturally. There are some fantastic ways in there that you can use in your exam. I don't like to hear, I agree with you, I agree with you, I don't agree, I totally agree. It's so false, it's so textbook English. There are many ways that you can agree and disagree. Like, even like to disagree politely, I see your point, but to be honest, no. Okay, or fair enough, but blah, 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 blah. Okay? So you've got to learn the vocab for that. Let's go to help your partner. Now, this is a big one because many people ask me this. What happens if your partner doesn't say anything? They just don't speak. Well, what you need to do for the interactive communication part of your mark, you need to make sure that you try to bring them into it. So ask them questions. So what do you think about this? What about you? And you? Do you have any opinions here? If they don't want to speak or just are too nervous, that's not your fault. That's not your problem. The examiner will speak to them in part 4. Just do what you can do. Now, what happens if your partner doesn't shut up and doesn't allow you to speak? Well, what you can try and do, you can try and come in, like when they sort of pause, just try and interrupt, say, if I may, if I could say something, if I can come in here, I would like to add something. You have to interrupt. If that partner is a complete asshole and doesn't let you speak because for some reason they're like, you're rubbish, I have no idea what you're talking about, I'm not going to let you speak, they will suffer. In the interactive communication mark, they will get a very low mark. And then if you haven't spoken much in part 3, you will have the chance to do it again in part 4. The examiner will ask you the questions first. Okay? So don't worry about it. You know, if providing, you know, you learn English at school or in a language school and you're practicing with people, you'll know exactly what you need to do. You need to share the task, right? Now, we have listen to your partner. I know that sounds obvious But sometimes I find it funny when I'm looking at students and listening to my students, and they're so sort of concentrated on what they want to say, and they say, and that's why I think televisions are useful. Do you agree? That's a good point. Like, that doesn't seem like such a relevant answer. Basically, that candidate wasn't listening to their partner and answered irrelevantly. The examiner would pay attention to that. Okay, you've got to listen to what they say, because you need to kind of flow, build on it, and kind of just go around, like link things together. Okay, don't spend too long on each prompt. This is a big problem. Quite often you'll find that the first one, students will spend 1 minute on it, which means you've got 1 minute for the next 4. Really, all you need to do is just say a couple of sentences, ask your partner, go on to one of the others, and just go through it. I'll show you how to do it in a minute. Where are we? Let's have relevant language. Of course, I test this with my student, because you could be with a partner who, for some reason, goes off on a different path. They go away from the question. And quite often, I've noticed that students follow that partner. They follow that irrelevance because they're nervous or they're shy. But you need to make sure that you answer that question. You cannot be irrelevant. So it doesn't matter how good your English is. If your answer is completely irrelevant, the task is incomplete. Okay? Simple as that. There we go. Don't need to reach a conclusion. Yes, when you have that 1 minute for the conclusion, you don't need to agree with your partner. As long as you say, well, for me, this is the most important one, blah, blah, blah. And for me, I would say this is the most useful one because, as I said, blah, blah, blah. Fine, you don't need to. As long as the examiner sees that you're heading towards a conclusion, it's fine. Okay? Now, I've written this in capital letters because it's so important. When you give your opinion on something, you must give a reason. Always say why. I want to hear the word because, or as, or for this reason, etc. I need to hear the reason why. If you don't, your marks will suffer. And as a result, by giving your reasons, you can expand your answers anyway. But don't spend too long on your answers to make sure you get through the task. Common mistakes in part 3 of FCE and CAE speaking are as follows. Number 1, the task is incomplete, as I've said. Okay, people just don't get it done, and it's a shame. English is too basic because, again, people don't know what to say. I often tell students, like here, even with, like, say, relevant language, and I want to talk about that very quickly, that I tell students to go onto websites like the BBC, read news articles from different subjects like the environment, the weather, economics, politics, history, technology, anything. Even the great books, vocabulary in use, upper intermediate, advanced, whatever. You need to build a vocabulary in different areas because you might get some topic on finance. You need to know some word to support finance. Or if it's environment, you need to know some words on environment. So you've got to go through those. And sometimes when students don't, well, the English just comes across as basic. They just don't know any decent vocab for anything, or even grammar. And it's really quite disappointing. Another big cause of failure is the task is not shared. Because someone wants to speak too much, some people don't speak at all. It seems so unnatural and it's dull. So go through what I've just said and you'll be fine. Now I'm going to give you a kind of strange example where I want you to imagine there are 2 of me. Pull 1 and pull 2. So I'll kind of move to the side a bit to kind of give you an idea of how it works. We're going to sort of do this question. It says, why would some people find these things difficult to live without? I'm not going to do all of it because it would take too long, but I can do, let's say, we'll start with the hairdryer and let's say mobile phone. It doesn't have to be in the order. You can go any way you want, okay? So here we go, just as an example. Okay, let's start with the first one, hairdryer. Well, personally speaking, I don't need one because I have no hair whatsoever, but I suppose people need a hairdryer because, especially if their hair's wet, they can get quite ill. So I think for many people it is extremely useful. What do you think? Well, yeah, I suppose I agree to some extent, but I mean, if I'm honest, that I don't think it's the most crucial thing in someone's life. I mean, for me personally, mobile phone is something I can't live without, and most people can't live without, because you need to contact people if you're late for work. How are you going to tell your boss? You know, everything's done nowadays on the mobile phone. I mean, you know, do you agree with me on that? Well, yeah, I suppose so. I mean, I can't, you know, I can't ever do without mine because I do everything on it. You know, I even plan my dinner, plan my love life on my phone. So I suppose I see where you're coming from. Let's go to television. That's how you do it. Okay. I want the good vocab, good grammar, share it, pass it around. It's like a kind of gossip around the coffee machine. That's what it's like. Imagine you're standing around the coffee machine at work, gossiping away, you know, your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. That's what it's like. And that's how you need to do it. Practice with your partner. If you don't have a partner to practice with, then basically you're going to have to try and practice on your own, at least just to do what I did, like pass it over and share it among yourself. Don't do it in public. People will think you're strange. You might get shot. So do it at home. I hope that was useful. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask me. Please leave some comments below, subscribe, all that stuff. Okay, now we're going to move on to the last one, part 4.